Steven Spielberg, I find quite confused in his recollection of me.
He's worked with more A-list stars than any filmmaker alive, but few people know Steven Spielberg keeps a secret list. 7 names. 7 actors who crossed lines so unforgivable that he quietly erased them from the most powerful Rolodex in Hollywood. What they did will shock you. You think you know Spielberg, the kind, grandfatherly figure behind E.T., Jaws, and Jurassic Park. But behind that warm smile lies one of Hollywood's coldest memories. Spielberg doesn't just make movies, he builds families. Tom Hanks calls him before making any major career move. Harrison Ford entrusts him with his legacy. But for every actor who earned that loyalty, there are others who paid the ultimate price for crossing him. Spielberg's rules are simple. Show up prepared, respect the process, and never put your ego above the story. Break those rules, and you don't just risk tension, you risk your entire career. What follows are the 7 actors who landed on Spielberg's private blacklist. Some were legends, others rising stars. All of them learned the same brutal lesson. In Hollywood, burn a bridge with the wrong man, and you burn everything. Number 1. Megan Fox, the rising star who lost it all. Before her name became a tabloid punchline, Megan Fox was one of Hollywood's brightest young prospects. She had the looks, the charisma, and the breakout role that should have secured her place on the A-list. Michael Bay hand-picked her as the female lead in Transformers, a billion-dollar franchise backed by none other than Steven Spielberg. On paper, it was the perfect launchpad. But instead of cementing her stardom, Fox's own words turned her into a cautionary tale. It began in 2007 while promoting the first Transformers film. At just 21, she made headlines by grumbling about the grueling demands of action movies, likening the experience to surviving a war zone. Spielberg, serving as executive producer, initially brushed it off as the immaturity of someone still adjusting to overnight fame. Then came 2009, and the interview that changed everything. Speaking to Wonderland magazine, Fox compared director Michael Bay to some of history's most infamous tyrants. He's like Napoleon. He wants to be like Hitler on his sets, and he is, she said. The comparison was outrageous, but what made it career-ending was the context. She was publicly trashing Bay while working on a Spielberg-produced franchise. In Hollywood terms, that was the ultimate misstep, insulting the protege in front of the patriarch. Spielberg's reaction was swift. Industry insiders later confirmed that he personally called the studio and ordered Fox's removal from the upcoming sequel, Transformers: Dark of the Moon. The official explanation was that Fox had outgrown the role. The truth: she had been fired at Spielberg's request. Michael Bay himself later admitted it, telling GQ, "Steven said, 'Fire her right now.'" From that moment, Fox's trajectory plummeted. The actress once touted as Hollywood's next big thing slid into the realm of low-profile roles and direct-to-video projects. The lesson was clear. In an industry ruled by power and perception, one careless interview can end a career. Some bridges, once burned, are never rebuilt. Number 2. Sean Bean, the method actor who went too far. Respected for his intensity and infamous for the many on-screen deaths that made him a cult favorite, Sean Bean nearly had a career-defining role under Spielberg. In 1997, he was cast in Saving Private Ryan, not as the title character, but as the cynical soldier who questions the mission itself. It should have been the role of a lifetime. Instead, it became the role that slipped away. From the very beginning, Bean's method acting clashed with Spielberg's set. He refused to break character, carrying the heavy psychological state of a traumatized World War II soldier between takes. What sounded like commitment quickly turned toxic. Cast and crew described the atmosphere as unbearable. Tom Hanks later recalled it felt like walking on eggshells. Bean stayed in character during meals, script discussions, even mandatory safety briefings before massive battle sequences. Then came the breaking point. During rehearsals for the iconic Omaha Beach landing, Bean lost control. Witnesses described it as a full psychological breakdown. He wasn't acting anymore, he was screaming, trembling, and reliving the horrors of war as if they were real. Filming was halted for 2 days while Spielberg weighed his options. For a director who values collaboration and trust above all else, the decision was heartbreaking but necessary. Bean was quietly replaced by Edward Burns, who delivered intensity without the chaos. Spielberg never spoke publicly about the incident, but crew members remember his words, "I need actors who can find truth without losing themselves. Some people can't tell the difference." Sean Bean's career went on, but never again with Spielberg. A sobering reminder that even the deepest dedication to method acting can push things too far. Number 3. Shia LaBeouf, the ungrateful protege. Spielberg discovered LaBeouf when he was just another kid from the Disney Channel. He handed him the lead role in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, essentially giving him the keys to one of cinema's greatest franchises. LaBeouf should have been grateful. Instead, he became the ultimate case of biting the hand that fed him. It started back in 2007. Crew members reported that LaBeouf would regularly challenge Spielberg's direction, often in front of the cast. He suggested changes to scenes, pushed back on Spielberg's vision, and worst of all, he did it with the arrogance of someone who had forgotten he was replaceable. Spielberg, ever the professional, tolerated it. He believed talent, no matter how difficult, could still be nurtured. But in 2010, LaBeouf committed the ultimate sin. In an interview with the Los Angeles Times, he publicly trashed the very film that made him a star. "I feel like I dropped the ball on the legacy people loved and cherished," he said. And then he went further, "You can blame it on the writer, and you can blame it on Steven." Read that again. He blamed Steven Spielberg, the man who had given him everything. Spielberg's response? Silent, but decisive. No press conference. No public feud. Just one quiet move. Shia LaBeouf was erased from every future Spielberg project. A silent exile. And in Hollywood, that silence speaks louder than any headline. In a 2012 interview, Spielberg was asked about difficult actors. His answer didn't name names, but insiders knew exactly who he meant. Gratitude is the foundation of all professional relationships. Without it, talent becomes noise. It was a clear shot at Shia LaBeouf. Losing Spielberg's protection marked the turning point of his career. From that moment on, LaBeouf became known less for his acting and more for his erratic, self-destructive behavior, a cautionary tale of what happens when you bite the hand that made you a star. Number 4. Edward Norton, the perfectionist who couldn't compromise. Edward Norton has long been regarded as one of the finest actors of his generation. His unforgettable performances in Fight Club, American History X, and Primal Fear proved that his talent was second to none. So when he was cast in Steven Spielberg's Munich, 2005, a tense thriller about Israel's response to the 1972 Olympic massacre, many expected it to be the start of a legendary partnership between two masters of detail. Instead, it became a cautionary tale of clashing creative styles. Norton is infamous for his obsessive preparation. He researches every nuance, questions every line, and dissects every motivation. Admirable as it may be, such intensity can overwhelm a director trying to keep a massive production on schedule. Trouble began as early as pre-production. Norton would show up to script meetings with stacks of notes, proposed rewrites, and exhaustive historical analyses. What should have been simple collaborations turned into marathon debates. Spielberg, who values preparation but ultimately relies on instinct, found Norton's style suffocating. "Edward wants to understand every molecule of his character," a close friend once recalled. But Spielberg believed that sometimes truth must be found in the moment, not in research. The breaking point came during a key scene, when Norton's character receives devastating news. Determined to try every possible emotional angle, Norton demanded endless retakes, stretching what was planned as a half-day shoot into 3 grueling days. Other actors grew restless, and the production slipped behind schedule. Known for his efficiency, Spielberg was forced to choose between artistic exploration and practical filmmaking. He chose the latter. Norton finished his role in Munich, and though his performance was praised, the experience left both men frustrated. Spielberg never cast him again. Years later, he summed it up with one sharp reflection. "Some actors need to understand everything. Others trust the process. I prefer working with the second kind. Number 5. Julia Roberts, the pretty woman who wasn't so pretty. The year was 1991, and Steven Spielberg was developing Hook, his ambitious reimagining of Peter Pan. He needed a Tinkerbell who could bring magic and mischief to the screen. Julia Roberts, fresh off her Pretty Woman success and commanding $7 million for the role, seemed perfect. What followed was one of the most toxic actor-director relationships in Spielberg's career. Roberts arrived on the Hook set with an attitude that stunned even veteran crew members. According to multiple sources, she treated the flying sequences as beneath her, complained about the technical demands of playing a fairy, and showed little interest in the collaborative process Spielberg valued. But the real problem wasn't diva behavior. It was her lack of preparation for a role she was being paid a fortune to play. Dustin Hoffman, who played Captain Hook, later described the atmosphere as tense. Robin Williams, ever the peacemaker, spent more time mediating between Roberts and Spielberg than focusing on his own role as Peter Pan. The breaking point came during a complex scene where Tinkerbell confronts Captain Hook. The sequence needed timing, emotion, and technical precision. Roberts, unprepared and frustrated, allegedly told Spielberg in front of the cast and crew that his direction was confusing and unhelpful. For a director who had never been spoken to so dismissively, it was shocking. The film was completed, but the relationship was beyond repair. Even as Roberts became a major star, she never worked with Spielberg again. When asked years later, Spielberg was bluntly diplomatic. Some actors bring light to a set, others bring shadows. I've learned to work only in the light. Roberts has never discussed Hook in detail, but her absence from his later films says it all. Number 6. Katherine Heigl, the TV star who forgot television made her. The most surprising name on this list isn't a legendary diva or a demanding method actor. It's Katherine Heigl, and her brief encounter with Steven Spielberg during the casting process for Lincoln shows why attitude can outweigh talent. In 2011, Heigl was riding high on her Grey's Anatomy fame and eager to make the leap into prestige dramas. When her team learned Spielberg was casting Lincoln, they pushed hard for her to audition for the role of Mary Todd Lincoln. On paper, it was the chance of a lifetime. In practice, it became a lesson in how to sabotage a career in one meeting. Sources say Heigl showed up 45 minutes late without apology. When Spielberg began outlining his vision for the film, she interrupted with unsolicited suggestions about Mary Todd Lincoln's character arc. Despite having no knowledge of Civil War history, she spoke as if she knew better. But the true deal-breaker came when Spielberg asked about her preparation. Heigl reportedly replied, "I don't really do research. I prefer to bring my own interpretation to historical characters." The room went silent. Spielberg, who had spent years immersed in Lincoln's life and times, was stunned by the indifference. The meeting ended quickly. Heigl never heard back. Sally Field was cast instead, delivering a meticulously researched performance that earned her an Oscar nomination. Meanwhile, word of Heigl's disastrous audition spread fast through Hollywood. Her growing reputation for being difficult, fueled by earlier criticism of Grey's Anatomy's writers, was now sealed. Within 2 years, she was off television and struggling to land film roles. Her career never recovered from the label of unprofessional and ungrateful. Spielberg never spoke publicly about the audition, but his choices made it clear. He worked only with actors who valued preparation, respect, and collaboration. Katherine Heigl's fall from grace is a stark reminder. In Hollywood, reputation is everything. Once you're known as difficult, even talent isn't enough to save you. Number 7. Marlon Brando, the fallen god. This is the story of a collaboration that broke Steven Spielberg's heart. Marlon Brando was his hero, the man who transformed acting forever with a streetcar named Desire and On the Waterfront. So when the chance came to be around his idol during the making of Apocalypse Now in the late 1970s, Spielberg was ecstatic. What he found instead was a legend who had become a shadow of himself. Brando arrived on Francis Ford Coppola's set overweight, unprepared, and seemingly uninterested in the collaborative spirit that had once defined him. But what struck Spielberg most was not Brando's decline. It was the way he treated a young filmmaker who looked up to him. Witnesses recall Brando brushing Spielberg off with condescending remarks, calling him the kid who makes movies about sharks. When Spielberg tried to spark a conversation about acting, Brando shut him down with a brutal line, "You wouldn't understand. You make popcorn movies." For Spielberg, who had worshipped him since film school, it was devastating. The final blow came when Spielberg watched Brando work. The actor once hailed as the most natural performer in cinema was now reading lines from cue cards taped to other actors' foreheads. The brilliance had faded into self-parody. Years later, when Spielberg had the power to cast anyone he wanted, Brando's representatives reached out about possible projects. His answer was always the same: no. In a rare candid moment, Spielberg admitted, "Sometimes your heroes disappoint you. And when they do, it's better to keep the memory intact than risk another disappointment." Brando passed away in 2004, never having worked with a director who once adored him. A sobering reminder that even genius, without discipline or respect, can wither into waste. But these 7 names stand for something more. They remind us that talent by itself isn't enough. Ego can ruin opportunity. Respect for the craft, the crew, and the story isn't optional. It's the foundation. Spielberg rarely speaks about these encounters. He doesn't have to. His silence says more than any interview ever could. Because when you're Steven Spielberg, you don't need to work with the difficult ones. You just choose to work with the right ones. And sometimes the strongest move a director can make is never picking up the phone again. In Hollywood, a town built on relationships, burning the wrong bridge can cost you everything. These 7 actors found that out the hard way.